I'll be curious to see where it lands. Obviously, we can get into the game and we can start assessing the leads. I think there's a lot of cool options on both teams on how we lead. And we've seen ourselves really good play from Nico Cognetta with this Dragapult Terrakion lead. It's just been so strong. There it is once again. But Ferrothorn Primarina, I mean, it always has to watch out for the Primarina, I feel. It's something that you always have to think about and make sure that you don't just let the Primarina take out your Terrakion free of charge. We've seen there's ways around that, and, you know, it looks like Nico hovering it once again. He always hesitates on this button. He looks at it, he makes sure it's going to be safe before he presses it, but he always lingers on beat up, which I think is interesting.
I think he's just doing it to taunt you here, Adam. You know, is he going to go for the beat up? Is he not? But I think you're right. For Christopher, bringing that Primarina is really nice. It's a really good counter to the lead that Nico's actually led. You know, the Terrakion can be pressured with water type moves and the Dragapult with ice type moves. And we know that, you know, Primarina has that kind of versatility in its makeup. You know, if it's got Blizzard and Hydro Cannon and things like that, it can deal so much damage in that Dynamax phase. But straight on the offensive here, we've got Nico going to be Dynamaxing up one of his Pokemon, and I always try and not look in that right hand corner, but it is indeed going to be the Terrakion. So I wonder if beat up is going to be coming out here, Adam.
It looks like that's what he went for, and it looks like he's going to be just trying to target down the Primarina here. That's kind of key, because that leaves the Ferrothorn to play its game, and leaving Ferrothorn is a risky bit of business. You've got to be careful that you don't let it set up Leech Seeds and let it sit on the field and just become problematic. Of course, Terrakion's very, very fast, and Gyro Ball relies on that. So could be an interesting way to try and deal with it. Of course, it's got a much bigger kind of health pool to work through because of that Dynamax. But there's the beat up. There's obviously all of those attack boosts that you want to see on your Terrakion. And I don't think there's many things that can resist at least a neutral attack from Terrakion after these boosts. At least a neutral max attack as well.
That's the thing, particularly in the Dynamax form, they're going to be packing an even harder punch. It's going to be the Max Rock Fall targeted down into that Primarina, and it picks up the solid KO. You know, we've seen that interaction from Nico's previous game here in the loser bracket, and unfortunately, Christopher's Primarina just unable to take that attack and will be returning to its Pokeball very swiftly. Ferrothorn, though, able to move and goes for the Iron Defense. Now, this is quite critical for Christopher here. You need to be able to boost up your defense as much as possible. Raising it sharply, raising it up by those 2 stages, does put it in a slightly better position to take attacks from the Terrakion, if Terrakion is using anything other than a Max Knuckle.
Right, and this gets interesting because like the Ferrothorn is now something you want to deal with for it sets up another Iron Defense, and like that Iron, if you get 2 Iron Defenses, that kind of matches the full beat up justified boost that he got early on, so needs to be a little bit cognizant of that, and maybe start looking at targeting the Ferrothorn. That said, you've got this really squishy, easy to knock out target in something like Cinderace, and it's just so tempting when you're the Terrakion player to go for that and see what you can do over there. Of course, Christopher does have numerous options on his team for what can Dynamax or Gigantamax and start causing problems there, so he just needs to be a little bit cognizant about where he throws his attacks. And if he can start lowering stats, looks like that's what he's considering here. But really the onus for the next 2 turns, while it's still Dynamax, is on the Terrakion. And also, another thing to consider is you've got to be always thinking about what type the Cinderace is going to be by the time you get around to hitting it.
That's the thing, Cinderace a little bit more delicate in nature when it comes to sort of its defenses, but as an offensive pressure on the field, particularly with the Libero ability, it can just chop and change abilities, and that gives it its defensive prowess on the field. You know, for example, if you were potentially in sort of the fire type, then you're not going to worry about ice type moves, but if you accidentally go into the flying type, when an ice beam's coming at you, that's going to be dealing super effective damage, and in the reverse as well, you can counteract those moves coming towards you. And Cinderace is going to be in its Gigantamax form for Christopher, going for that max steel spike, so straight away going into its steel typing, and going to be firing off a powerful move into the Incineroar that's just come in. So a great switch in here by Nico, being able to not only get the Intimidate off, but being able to take that attack really well. I think critically though for Christopher is raising the defense on his side of the field, and the defense of that Ferrothorn now at +3. Something like a body press is now going to be hitting really, really hard, but Terrakion also knows how to deal out hard hits, goes for that Max Knuckle, targets down into the Cinderace, and that's where again you see that interaction. You know, bringing yourself into the steel type means you are going to be vulnerable to those fighting type attacks, and that's exactly what Nico's been able to capitalize on here, getting out the 1-hit KO against the Cinderace and giving his Terrakion, I mean, it doesn't need another attack boost, but you know, it's basically flexing out here on the field. Incineroar though does get it, and that will help it out against this Ferrothorn, or it would have if Ferrothorn didn't pick up the KO with the body press. So much going on in this turn, a lot of big damage, critical KOs, and I think it's a nice KO there for the Terrakion to remove the Gigantamax from the field, but there's still a problem with this Ferrothorn, Adam.
This Ferrothorn could be problematic if it's allowed to body press. I do imagine that that's now going to be the focal point of Nico's next couple turns, is making sure that you don't get body pressed once again. Of course, the body press is kind of an interesting call. If you leave the Dragapult on the field, then the body press doesn't work, but he calls that switch and gets the knockout there, rewinding the turn a little bit further. Of course, a really good call by Nico to land the Max Knuckle into the Cinderace, knowing it was going to become a Steel type, or at least assuming it may be. You do have to watch out, it does have access to Max Airstream in a number of cases. Maybe something he knows about. This is open team sheet format, so just bear in mind they know what types you can choose between. And just being able to land that Max Knuckle, getting a knockout and a boost. I know it sounds silly, but that boost might actually be important with the extra defenses on this Ferrothorn. So a lot going on here, but that's one turn of Dynamax used for Christopher, and then we're on turn 3 already for Nico. And it's not like he can get stopped in this turn, or not immediately, so looks to be a high value Dynamax on this Terrakion.
Exactly, Terrakion's still looking to be in such a good offensive pressure. Like we said in the previous matches, we've seen as well, the Incineroar throwing one Intimidate across is really nothing to that Terrakion. It laughs in the face of that Intimidate. But although it can apply a lot of pressure to the Incineroar, and that would be quite a nice easy KO with something like a Max Rockfall, particularly as Incineroar can't exactly fake it out when you're in that Dynamax phase. Ferrothorn is going to be such a problem, and things like those body presses are going to be able to deal out so much damage. It doesn't worry about any attack drops. It has that defense buff that it takes for that body press, so it's definitely going to be a formidable threat for Nico to deal with. And if he's unable to pick up a KO against it, it's going to be really, really strong against this Rillaboom. But Rillaboom going to stop it in its tracks for this particular turn, gets a critical hit on the fake out, preventing Ferrothorn from moving, but will of course have to take a little bit of recoil from the Iron Barb, so I'm sure the grassy terrain at the end of the turn will help out with that. The Max Knuckle is going to come out and target down into that Incineroar, so Nico actually just trying to write off all the other Pokemon and single out this Ferrothorn so that he can take it down with all of his remaining Pokemon and just focus in on it right at the end. Particularly on a turn where that fake out has occurred, so he doesn't have to worry about another Iron defense. Yes, his Dynamax turns are now over, and I wonder if things like that close combat are going to be enough.
I mean, it's got one Iron defense, but this is, it's a huge Terrakion, right? I mean, it doesn't have Max Knuckle now, but it just got another boost to make up for the fact that Intimidate dropped it. So it's nearly at full attack as well. The max kind of boosting you can get on your attack. And there's only so much Iron defense does against that, especially when you're a Steel type, right? Like, you're still going to be taking super effective damage, and you're still going to be getting hit really, really hard. I think the fake out's fine there. It just leaves the Ferrothorn, takes it out of the game for that turn. You know full well that Max Knuckle's going to land on that Incineroar, and you're going to get the knockout. You're not going to get caught by any silliness, and you're just able to put yourself in a position where it's currently 3 versus 1. The 1 is a very defensive Ferrothorn, which is great, and certainly something that people have swung games back with, but that defense is easily broken by the fact Terrakion's in a perfect position to start fighting back. So I think overall this Terrakion showing off in the last set we saw from Nico, and this one as well, just how powerful it can be early on.
Exactly, the Ferrothorn, even though it has got, I think, +3 defense thanks to the boost as well from Max Steel Spike, isn't gonna be enough against this big close combat from the Terrakion. And that's one of the things you have to bear in mind as well, that Terrakion got that beat off at the beginning of the game, so it just is able to deal out so much damage. And even though the defenses are up on that side of the field, Terrakion having that super effective move with all the offensive pressure that it's got is able to pick up that clean KO. And I have to say, from Nico's side,
there's a lot needed, I think, from Christopher to come back and stop this slide all the way from the winner's bracket into, honestly, a really tough matchup in the loser's bracket.
Well, let's see how they're able to handle game 2. And I think you made some really good points there, Adam, with the Pokemon you might want to bring maybe also aren't in the best scenario. Something like the Togekiss would be great for that redirection, dragging away that beat up, but will still not want to take a Max Rockfall from Terrakion, whether it's boosted or not. And Christopher has identified that Togekiss might be what he needs to stop that beat up play from going on, pairing it up with the Primarina. But Nico going for that solid combination, Dragapult and Terrakion once again out on the field.
This makes a lot more sense, right? Lead your 2 fairy types against the Terrakion. And yes, the Terrakion hits pretty hard, right? The Terrakion hits the Togekiss very, very hard with the Rock Slides, or in this case, Max Rockfall. But I mean, you've still got 2 fairy types, and particularly when you're maxing and using max moves, you can't knock both of them out. The Primarina matches up great against the Terrakion, you know, just being able to deal with it is so good, but it's just got to be careful. I mean, Nico's made a big call here as I peeped his move selection, and this could be great or disastrous for him. That said, there is going to be some Dynamaxing from both sides, so I like that Christopher's kind of looking to one of these Pokemon to provide a little bit more. I think that's key, and I think the Primarina is the perfect choice here.
I fully agree. I think having the Primarina in its Dynamax form here is going to be able to apply a lot of pressure, particularly if that Togekiss does go for Follow Me, and you don't have to worry about the potential beat up. It's exactly what Christopher's doing here, and I think it's a really safe and solid play to make, in all honesty. I think Dragapult as well, going for that beat up. I mean, Nico having to play at bowls, you just don't know how that mind game is going to be able to go, and I think, you know, redirecting away, really, really good here for Christopher, and it allows his Primarina to be in a great position to pick up a KO, whether it's against the Dragapult or do some really good damage to that Terrakion. Of course, Terrakion going to go for that max Rockfall. You want to get rid of that pesky Togekiss and remove it from field as best as possible. And on the flip side, if you're Christopher, you want to be able to remove that Dragapult from play, because if it survives this turn, and in fact, if both of Nico's Pokemon survive, he can just go for the beat up on the next turn, because that Togekiss has been removed from play and is right back in its Pokeball. And Primarina gonna go for that max Starfall, targeting down into that Dragapult. This will be a really, really solid KO. And, you know, I just think it's a phenomenal play by both players, picking up some great KOs. And I think overall, I think Christopher might have got the switch correct there.
I think the change up from Christopher is very important there, and a 1-for-1 on the Pokemon that aren't Dynamax, actually probably a little more important just on that turn alone, not looking at the rest of the game, but on that turn alone, Christopher definitely comes out ahead. And Nico, interesting, I've mentioned it before, you know, when he's thinking about beat up, he usually hovers on that menu a little bit, and he kind of just committed to it very quickly there after how successful it was game 1. I think what he needed to do was take a page out of the Clashes book, ask himself, should I stay with it or should I go to something different, and just moves and goes a little bit hasty. We saw it yesterday. When beat up doesn't land, this Terrakion is a lot more manageable and able to be dealt with. And yeah, you got the knockout on Togekiss. Yeah, it doesn't take a max Rockfall, we know that. But now you have a much harder time dealing with this Primarina, and the Intimidates from the Incineroar are going to start to stick as well. So it's not the easiest turn, I think, for Nico to bounce back from. The Terrakion, though, landing big Max Knuckles is certainly going to help out. This Primarina is going to be able to fire back, and we see the Incineroar not scared with no beat-up boost.
I mean, that's the thing, the Incineroar here as well, you know, applying so much pressure, but not going for that fake out, actually critically going for the parting shot. I was wondering if there might have been a burning jealousy in there or not, but I don't believe that's coming out here from Christopher. May not have access to it, so the parting shot, just trying to lower some of the offensive pressure, does allow him as well to bring that Incineroar right back into the back, bring it out again later on, Intimidate another day. But, you know, like we said before, Terrakion can take those Intimidates all day long, and bringing in the Ferrothorn where you can start maybe going for the Iron defenses and pressuring against that Rillaboom can also help out as well. Primarina going to go for the Max Starfall, this time going to connect into the Terrakion, going to be able to take that really reasonably well though.
Yeah, I mean, having the stand up certainly helps a little bit here for Terrakion, and that's something that's kind of key. But, I mean, there's really, I mean, the Rillaboom just came in, it's going to be able to help out the next turn or so. But I think making this Terrakion a lot weaker after a couple Intimidates, Intimidate Parting Shot, my apologies, certainly more manageable, and there's only so much it can do in this last turn of its Dynamax after its attack's been dropped twice. There's also the option for Christopher to bring Incineroar back in, Intimidate it one more time, and really make it nigh on useless. So plenty of options there. The Primarina doesn't get the knockout. That's very good to know if we head into game number 3, because you can take a Max Starfall and feel a little bit better about it. But that's, I mean, that's way more damage than he got down on the Terrakion last time as well. This Terrakion just trying to keep its attack stat up with the Max Knuckles. That's probably not the one you want for it.
No, I mean, I did something bad here by underestimating that Terrakion. Even though it's getting the Max Knuckles up, not dealing too much to the Primarina, the Max Knuckle does help out that Rillaboom, deals a lot of damage, but not enough to pick up the KO critically. And the thing I love about this as well, the Max Skies are going to come out, connect into the Terrakion, pick up the KO, and change the weather. So there's going to be no sand damage coming around as well. There may have been enough to really put that Primarina in a precarious position. So phenomenal play there by the Primarina, being able to pick up the KO against Nico's Terrakion. And Rillaboom, again, sitting in a position where, yes, it can pick up the KO against the Pumarina, but this Ferrothorn is going for these iron defenses, and there's not a lot that Rillaboom can really do to take down a Ferrothorn, particularly when it's got its defense boosted up.
So there's another interesting addition that the Max Geyser brings, which is setting up the rain for the Ferrothorn. Not only removing that damage from the sand, but now that Ferrothorn's feeling pretty good after an iron defense against 2 physical attackers, that Ferrothorn's got to be sitting pretty and thinking, well, you can't deal with me quickly enough. I could leech seed, obviously you can't leech seed the Rillaboom, but you could leech seed the Incineroar, get that recovery going every single turn while it attempts to attack you with Flare Blitz in the rain into an iron defense. And there's really limited options that you can get out of this this Rillaboom as well, so it's going to be a tough one. I think, obviously, Flare Blitz and Burning Jealousy options there, but the rain is going to be so impactful, and setting that up on the last turn of Dynamax is a really good kind of forward-thinking thought from Christopher to say, well, my win condition relies on these 2. Obviously, I mean, yeah, he has the option to switch Incineroar in, and that helps, but most importantly, the only full health Pokemon on his team is Ferrothorn, so that becomes a real focal point of his win condition here, and playing into that is just so key.
I mean, Nico really taking every single second he can here at the moment. You know, he wants to be able to try and take a clean 2-0 here, but things are definitely stacked against him. Rillaboom going to go for that high horsepower and pick up the KO against the Primarina. Really like this play, you know, quite solid. You can potentially have caught the Incineroar on a switch in, so going for that ground type move was definitely optimal. Burning Jealousy, however, going to come out from the Incineroar, and thanks to the defense boost on that Ferrothorn, it's able to take that so well. I mean, that's not an animation we see every day. It's Ferrothorn take a fire type move so well, and it also manages to get off another iron defense. So Christopher really in a great position where he's setting up for that end game situation, because he can bring in the Incineroar again now. It can apply another Intimidate, go for that Fake Out, and this Ferrothorn can just be sitting here really pretty and start picking up some KOs.
Well, here's the thing is, the Rillaboom actually just can't touch the Ferrothorn right now. It just can't deal requisite damage to get anywhere near a knockout. I mean, I'd be shocked. I haven't seen or crunched the numbers myself, but I'd be shocked if this Rillaboom does significantly more than the leftovers actually does to the Ferrothorn, or the leftovers recovery gives it. With 2 iron defenses, its defense is almost at full, the maximum you can get it to, so it's probably in a good position. Of course, this Incineroar can start adding it up a little bit, but as we saw there with the rain, fire type attacks just aren't that impressive in this situation. So this Ferrothorn, I think if it gets a Leech Seed down, may be able to just slow this game down, and it's going to be given opportunities to do that. He knows, thanks to the way this tournament's played, that there's no Protect on the Incineroar, so there could just be a turn here where it's just Fake Out Leech Seed and just set up for the rest of the game.
Yeah, Nico's really dancing with his hands tied here. There's not a lot that he can do in this situation against Christopher. He's really playing through all of the motions, but he does actually critically manage to pick up the KO against that Incineroar, so just removes that threat from the field for some additional damage. But Ferrothorn, speaking of damage, goes straight into that Incineroar slot, picks up a really, really solid KO, and you know, now it's looking to be a little bit more precarious.
I completely forgot about the body press from game 1. We saw it after the iron defense. It's such a good combination, and we've seen it a couple times in this tournament, but that's one way to deal with the Incineroar, right? Just Fake Out body press it. Really kind of aggressive play. I mean, you don't often see Ferrothorn taking knockouts quite that easily, and now, I mean, this is absolutely curtains for the Rillaboom. It can't do damage. It's just going to get body pressed over and over again. So 2 iron defenses has actually turned, thanks to the new move body press in Sword and Shield, turn this this really defensive Ferrothorn into a really offensive threat. Whenever I see Ferrothorn, I default back to Leech Seed, slow the game down, but Iron Defense Body Press is just such a different game plan.
I mean, with Ferrothorn, sometimes, like, this is why we can't have nice things. When you've got a Ferrothorn that can be in 2 different modes, you can have it as that really offensive one, well, kind of offensive one, so it's got its defenses up, going for those body presses, KO, KO, KO. And then you also have the Ferrothorn that, like you said, Adam, can sit on that field, go for the Leech Seeds, and just stall out a game. And I'm quite relieved to see Christopher going for that more offensive one here. It definitely shows Ferrothorn to be such a diverse Pokemon, and depending on how the build fits in your team, it can be a really relevant member of your squad. And as again, you can just see here, Nico going for the Protect, but Ferrothorn going for the Body Press, and I think it's going to be only a matter of clicks until we're jumping into a Game 3.
I don't see a way around this Ferrothorn. With 2 iron defenses and high horsepower and grassy glide as your offensive options, it's certainly not looking good for Rillaboom. And something that I think Nico is going to have to think about in game number 3. He's going to have to think about how that Terrakions executed. and really kind of mull it over. Make sure he doesn't waste the beat up into Justified and throw it at a Togekiss again. It's just not worth it. You've got to do a little bit more, and that double fairy lead was really cool from Christopher. It was really problematic for that standard lead that we've now seen for the last couple games from Nico to deal with. So yeah, this Rillaboom's kind of up against it. Obviously, we're running down the clock a little bit here. I think Nico just trying to spend some time thinking about game number 3. Make sure he mulls it over. Rillaboom doesn't land the protect, and we'll see how much the body press does. I'm going to guess a lot.
Ooh, a lot, but not enough to pick up a KO. The Rillaboom able to hang on 10 HP, but it really is just ticking away for the Rillaboom in this situation. Ferrothorn's going to be able to go for that body press again later on in this game. But I think if you're Nico here, I mean, this is where you have to really be thinking about how you're going to go into your game 3, because your competition lifeline is at stake here. You have to be able to stay in the competition by winning. You know, you're in the losers bracket. There's nothing else you can do. So taking all these valuable seconds, I think, is a really wise decision from him. And he's going to call on all that expertise for being in the top cut of all those internationals. So try and pull him forward, stay in the competition to try and get that title.
You've got to do it. I mean, it looks strange from where we're sitting that he's taking his time, and we know that one more body press. There's no recovery on Rillaboom. You can't get it back to full health and weave in enough attacks. So definitely time for Nico to mull this one over and go, okay, well, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to think about it and make sure that when I get to game 3, which is obviously coming up very shortly, then I'm feeling a little bit better. We are going to see how little damage it does. Yeah, that's not very much. I'm glad we confirmed that. And Iron Barbs even takes the knockout.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate there for Rillaboom. I mean, call it what you want there, Adam. Technically, Ferrothorn didn't get... Well, are you ready for it, Adam? Because I am. Let's jump into this game 3 and see exactly which player is going to be advancing in on the competition and which one is going to have their tournament dreams crushed. So it's going to be Primarina and Togekiss coming out for Christopher once again. That redirection and the potential Dynamax of the Primarina looking so strong against the, no surprises there, Dragapult Terrakion lead from Nico.
Dragapult Terrakion's been working for him, right? He's been able to make it work. He knows exactly how this one often plays out. So it's going to be interesting to see what changes he makes. And it looks like he's hovering a change, actually, here in... what he does on the first turn. He's definitely mulling it over. No Dynamax on the Terrakion, which is certainly interesting. And I don't see a reason, honestly, to focus on Christopher for a little bit, for him to change what he did. I mean, he doesn't have any need to, right? He followed me, and yeah, he got knocked out, and that was terrible, but Primarina Dynamaxed and started taking knockouts. So, certainly mulling this one over, if you're Nico Davide. I do like being able to Rock Slide over Max Rockfall, to be honest with you. I think getting spread damage down is absolutely huge and can be a whole lot of problems. Just the chip damage or the flinches, it makes life so much harder for your opponent. So a change in the Dynamax this time could swing this game very drastically.
I honestly really like this change here by Nico. I think you're right. Christopher doesn't really have too many reasons to not go for the same strategy he went with before. It was safe and it stops him going into that precarious position where he could be against the beat-up Terrakion. But at the same time, this adjustment by Nico is really nice. We've talked about it a lot in this bracket. Dynamax Dragapult can be so strong. And if he's able to start applying a lot of sort of defense drops, that's also going to help out the synergy of that Terrakion. Of course, you can't go for any Dragon-type moves against both Fairy types, and it's quite a risk. Leaving your Dragapult so vulnerable against both of these opponents, but let's see what goes down. Togekiss is going to be going for that follow me, so Nico doesn't have to worry about any offensive pressure coming out in that direction. This Dragapult does go for the Max Phantasm, obviously going to connect down into that Togekiss, does about over 50%, but if this is being followed up by something like the Rock Slide, that's going to be able to pick up the KO against Togekiss. As long as it connects, of course, it's always a precarious situation, and do some decent damage to that opposing Primarina. Does manage to connect, picks up the KO against Togekiss, and does about a quarter damage to the Primarina.
That's a really nice synergy. Max Phantasm lowering defenses and then being able to follow up with the Rock Slide. Really, really cool to see there. And this is interesting. The Terrakion's actually the target of the Max Geyser. Does have the Focus Sash, so not able to pick up a knockout there. And, you know, Christopher's team actually a little bit slower than some of the stuff we've seen from, you know, other trainers in this tournament. No real kind of quick offensive mode that some of the others have. So this could just be another turn of Max Phantasm Rock Slide. If he's got the Ferrothorn, now would be a really good time to bring it and try and get it set up for the end of the game. But then that kind of forces some interesting decisions. Cinderace coming through here, which Cinderace without its Dynamax is an interesting one. I'm not sure I've always been a big fan when you can't do that. He's obviously committed it to the Primarina now, but again, we go back to game 1. If you call the Libero change correctly, you could cause some real big problems here for this Cinderace.
I mean, Cinderace can definitely cause a few problems with the Libero ability still. You know, if it's got something like Sucker Punch, you can pick up the KO against the Terrakion really, really nicely, and then having that Dark type will help you out against some of the moves that the Dragapult's able to fire off. But like you mentioned previously, it's not one of the bulkiest Pokemon, and the one thing you really like with Cinderace is its capability to be able to boost up defenses and boost up attack stats and boost up speed. It really is the stat-changing Dynamax Pokemon. It's not going to be able to do that in this game. Terrakion, however, going to go for that helping hand, going to target down into the Max Phantasm into the Primarina, and able to pick up the really, really solid KO. I really like that. You know, Primarina was already at -1 defense due to the Max Phantasm the previous turn. The helping hand also covers full Sucker Punch, just in case that's going to be coming out here. And the thing is, Terrakion is kind of on a limited time frame here, down to its Focus Sash. It might want to just be helping out its friend while it still can, as Cinderace does go into Steel type, thanks to the Iron Head, and will be picking up a KO against the Terrakion. So Nico, I don't think it's going to be too upset by this change. You know, Terrakion has done a really good job picking up the KO against the Togekiss and helping out Dragapult in that turn, and now gives him the opportunity to bring in another Pokemon with this free switch. And I think bringing in the intimidating Incineroar is really, really good for him here.
Right, and the intimidating Incineroar against Ferrothorn and the Cinderace, really good. No Dynamax available. The last turn of Dynamax available for Nico Davide. So I think this turn he just needs to make sure he gets really good value out of it. It's going to be an interesting one to see how he plays it. He has options that kind of change the stats around for Christopher's Pokemon, you know, dropping attacks or dropping defenses. It kind of works out, I guess, in the same way a little bit, but it just depends how he wants to play around with it. Most importantly, I think it's a longer term view, but the rain was set up really early in this game. So the previous game we saw rain as the 3rd turn of Primarina's Dynamax, and it was actually set up on turn 1 here. So yeah, this is turn 3, but you know, it's within view to say, okay, well, I may be able to finally hit the Ferrothorn with a fire type attack, which even if you set up boosts, it's still a fire type attack into a Ferrothorn. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it's something he can think forward to, and maybe focus in on the Cinderace a little bit in this turn. Cinderace changing its type to normal, thinking about those Max Phantasms that have been coming through from this Dragapult.
Yeah, I really like that play, making good use of the Libero ability, going into the normal type, and also just playing defensively in this particular turn, as Incineroar's got that fake out, so going into the Ferrothorn but not leaving it too exposed thanks to the Protect. This Dragapult actually goes for the Max Whirlwind, going to go into that Cinderace, do so much damage, take below 50% through the Protect, and lower the attack of both the opposing Pokemon. I think this is most helpful against that Cinderace, known for having something like High Jump Kick that can apply a lot of pressure to the opposing Incineroar, and now being at -2, you're really not going to worry about that Cinderace too much at all. And Christopher doesn't have the utility to be able to switch. That Cinderace is stuck on the field right now with those lowered attack stats.
Cinderace isn't going to be able to do too much damage. Of course, it's not hitting into a Dynamax anymore, so things are looking a little bit better. And this Ferrothorn is, I mean, I'd argue still in trouble. Yeah, it's got the rain, but this time, no Iron Defense boost yet. That very defensive play in the previous turn from Christopher makes sense. There's a fake out available on the field, and you've got to be respectful of that. You can't leave a Pokemon exposed to get faked out and then followed up with an attack. But I like the mix-up to Max Whirlwind. It's very heads-up of the potential Protect into normal typing, and yeah, lowering the attack on the Cinderace makes it very, very manageable indeed. So I think Nico's got himself in a great position here. He still has one more Pokemon as well, which it looks like it's the Rillaboom if I recall correctly, and that's not going to be great against the Ferrothorn, but at least it means he can switch, which would be really nice.
100%, and the little Droopy getting in on the action as well. We always love to see that, picking up the KO against the Cinderace. The second one follows up and does a bit of chip into the Ferrothorn, and this really is now the target for Nico. It's the last remaining Pokemon from Christopher, so Nico just needs to get through this Ferrothorn to advance in this competition. And even in the rain, I mean, there's only so much the rain's going to be able to do to this Ferrothorn when it doesn't have its defenses up. It does so much damage from that Incineroar. Ferrothorn is going to go for the Iron Defense. There's not really a lot of other options it can do, but I think from the double targeting that Nico's got, you know, the Dragon Darts and another Flare Blitz, even at the +2 defense, Nico's just got all the utility to be able to whittle his way through this Ferrothorn. Even if it wants to go for those Protects and try recovering a little bit of HP, eventually the rain is going to stop and those Flare Blitzes are going to do a lot more damage.
at some point he has to attack too, and the problem is when you're attacking is you're going to take a lot of damage in that turn. It's going to be less now. He did just set up a very smart Iron Defense, which obviously helps against the combination of Dragapult and Incineroar. But at some point as well, that Rain ends, and that Flare Blitz then becomes a whole lot more valuable. So we saw how much it did that turn. The other thing as well that could be interesting to note, Christopher has to protect to get Leftovers recovery in. And those turns could kind of be taken advantage of by the Dragapult. The Dragapult could fly, which is obviously the 2-turn move. And if it can do that, I mean, it forces a very weird timing on when it's safe to protect with this Ferrothorn. And I think that should be able to seal up the game for Nico Davide. Just deciding the Dragon Darts, though, and that makes sense. It's just a nice, consistent attack. You don't have to worry about protects coming through when you least expect them. But yeah, that's little bits of damage. They're going to add up, but they're probably not going to deal much more than what the Leftovers does.
Interesting enough, Nico going for the passing shot using the Incineroar to bring back out his last Pokemon in the back. And I think in a way this makes sense, where you can have the Incineroar back on the field when Rain is no longer in effect to apply a lot of pressure. And unless the Ferrothorn has decided to go for another Iron Defense, this will be a good play by Nico. But once again, you have to be concerned. If Iron Defense keeps being allowed to set up, then the Incineroar can go for the Flare Blitz as all it likes. It's going to be not dealing as much damage as Nico would intend to. And Ferrothorn could find a way to come back into this.
It's got a long way to go. Let's not rule this one, really close yet. Let's just make it clear. Ferrothorn has a really long way to go. It's going to be a lower attack from the parting shot, which I guess helps. But most importantly, Incineroar is going to be in a safe spot for whenever we do get the Rain gone. Grass is going to land on the battlefield. And the Body Press, yeah, that's a good switch, because the Body Press into the Rillaboom would have probably knocked out the Incineroar. And there it is. There's the Rain finally stopping. So the grassy terrain actually helps out the Ferrothorn by giving it some really good recovery options. More than just the Leftovers. But at the end of the day, Rain is over, and you've only got one Iron Defense to deal with this Flare Blitz, which is probably a bit ambitious. Maybe needs to weave in another before this Incineroar comes back on the field.
Well, I was just hoping for the Ferrothorn, but dash my dreams, Adam. I mean, the other thing you actually have to consider, though, is Body Press is not going to be a concern for that Dragapult. So if this Ferrothorn doesn't really have anything other than Leech Seed to go down against that Dragapult, it's going to be incredibly difficult for Christopher. Aside from this Incineroar that's just rejoined the field, Dragapult's certainly going to be a problem. And Rillaboom's in a position now where it can go for a Fake Out, is exactly what Nico's going for here, just to try and stall out another turn. You've then got Fake Out coming in again with the Incineroar on the next turn, so it really does render Ferrothorn in a position where it can't go for any defense boost, it can't even go for any attacks. There's just nothing that Christopher can do, and Nico's doing a phenomenal job of just really shutting this down, but Christopher's not giving up hope yet.
No, I mean, you can't. You're in the losers bracket. You've got to play out every single game and make sure that you stay in the tournament as long as possible, and Christopher's doing a really good job of that right now by saying, okay, well, I'm going to just try with the Ferrothorn. Maybe there'll be a mistake, or I can land a Body Press into a switch or something, because the Body Press will knock out Incineroar and Rillaboom from here. That said, there is of course the Dragapult, which doesn't really deal enough damage, but can't be hit by the Body Press. So the options get a little bit limited, but now Rain's gone, I think Nico should be able to just Flare Blitz. And yeah, there's going to be recovery coming through every turn, but the Flare Blitz does significantly more. And there's only so many times you can take a Flare Blitz and not feel kind of bad about it. So Nico definitely being forced to go the long way around in this one, but it looks like he's going to be able to wrap it up, as he's just played through the board position very, very well.
Exactly, I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out game of this Game 3, but Incineroar going for the Fake Out here into the Protect of the Ferrothorn, so going to just be followed out by the Rillaboom and the High Horsepower. So not a lot really that Nico can do in the face of the Protect, but not a lot that Christopher can do either, facing down against all of these Pokemon that Nico's got. And I think if you're Christopher, yeah, you maybe want to utilize the grassy terrain while it's on the field as best you can, and obviously the Leftovers recovery as well. It just gives him some way to regain that HP and maybe try and push some of the dice rolls into his favor, but I think ultimately everything is stacked up against him in this situation. Ferrothorn, like you said, needs to start dealing out some damage if it wants to be able to have a chance of picking up any KOs, but the risk of going for an offensive move means Incineroar and Rillaboom are free to go for a Flare Blitz and a High Horsepower right into it.
This combination of double targeting into Ferrothorn should be enough to do it in this turn. I'd be shocked if Christopher can buy any more time in this game, and it's just another fantastic game from Nico Cognetta. I mean, he's been playing so well in this tournament. Losers bracket after round 1. He's just been really fixing errors in his games as well. I think that can't be undervalued. Like, he's had a couple game 2s that looked a little dicey, and then he's always been able to like recorrect them in game 3 and learn from it. We see a negligible amount of damage from the high horsepower. I think Iron Barbs did more, which is a little bit sad.
Yeah.
But Incineroar this time just burning Jealousying, no messing around because of the rain, and burning Jealousy is just going to be able to tidy it up. So really good way to close out the game from Nico Cognetta. Really smart for him to see those win conditions and play through them, even though they took him a little